carrot in the corner of his mouth, pants just full, just not caring. I'm just gonna go right on myself. And he's walking around with the Tommy gun up, and he's just like, and he just like lights everybody up. Thank you for joining me for yet another episode of the Everyman Movie Review. We are continuing our theme of historical figures and historical stories. This time we're flashing forward from 2017, when Mary Shelley was released, to this year, 2020, with Capone. And there is a lot going on with this movie, both behind the camera and in front of it. But most importantly, it is about a historical figure, Al Capone, but not where we usually see him. We usually see him in the high times of his life, living as a gangster. This is at the end of his life, the last year after he was released from prison because he was no longer a threat, till when he died. But before we get too far into it, let's get through the pleasantries, shall we? Capone was directed by Josh Trank, and if you recognize that name, that is because he is the Josh Trank of Fantastic Four fame from 2015, and the Josh Trank who was put on a Star Wars movie and later removed from a Star Wars movie. It was said that Josh had a scarlet letter in Hollywood after what happened on the Fantastic Four movie, and unfortunately, he just can't catch a break. 2020's Capone was scheduled to be released in theaters, but then went straight to VOD after the theaters got, canceled from COVID. Capone was also written by Josh Trank. It is starring Tom Hardy as Capone, otherwise known as Fonz, throughout the movie. Fonz is, of course, short for Alphonse, which was his name in Italian. Funny bits of trivia here. Tom Hardy has now, in 4 of the last 5 roles he played, actually played a gangster. He was a gangster in Lawless. He played 2 brothers that were mobsters, and the one in the beginning escapes me, but I remember. The only exception in the last 5 movies was Venom, where he was also kind of a bad guy, but kind of a good guy, which is how these, boss movies kind of go. He's also the second British guy to play Al Capone. The first was on Boardwalk Empire, and I can't remember the guy's name, but I remember hearing him play Capone and being like, that guy's British? And the English actors completely blow me away with their ability to be like, English. Actors from the UK completely blow me away because they're able to put on an American accent, and then you hear them in an interview, like Christian Bale, and he's like, oh, right, yeah, he had no idea. And I'm like, who? What? That's Batman. What are you doing? That's the guy from American Psycho. It's very confusing. Continuing with the cast, Linda Cardellini plays May, Matt Dillon as Johnny, Al Sapienza as Ralphie, Catherine Narducci as Rosie, Noel Fisher as Junior in a completely different role than I think I've seen him in before, Kyle MacLachlan as Dr. Carlock, Rose Bianco as Nana. Josh Trank actually makes an appearance in this as Agent Harris, Edgar Arriola as Rodrigo, and Wayne Perret as Supervisor Nordhoff. So if you don't know the story of Al Capone's life, you may be surprised if you watch this movie. Everyone likes to think of him as the lovable gangster and the guy who killed a bunch of people, but also kind of a good guy. Maybe some of the people he killed deserved it. Pretty sure Capone was the St. Valentine's Day massacre guy, but you'd have to check me on that. But nonetheless, so eventually he was arrested, and surprisingly not for any of the murders or the robberies or any of that crime, but they got him on tax evasion. It's one of those stories that is kind of widely known. It's like, well, remember, they didn't get Capone for the murder. They got him for the tax evasion. The governments always get theirs. Capone also famously spent some of his 10-year sentence. He was actually sentenced to far longer than that, but he spent 10 years in jail. Some of that was spent at the Rock. That is, of course, Alcatraz Island. But after about 10 years in jail with not great medical services, it was deemed that he was no longer a threat and would be released for essentially palliative care. And that's when it's more expensive to keep you a prisoner because we have to take care of you. We're going to send you home to your family and let them take care of you so we don't have to. But early in his life, it's likely that Capone contracted syphilis, and it went untreated for a long period of time. And even if it was treated later, it at some point turned into neurosyphilis, which is just a later stage of syphilis that goes to your brain. It causes dementia, a lot of issues that are kind of similar to Alzheimer's, although it is definitely caused by syphilis instead. There are some stories about Capone. The carrot thing, which we're going to talk about in a bit, is true. Fishing out of his pool rather than going out to the lake, those kind of things, that's all coming from his brain just basically rotting away with neurosyphilis. And that's where we meet Capone. He is freshly out of jail. It is Thanksgiving and he's eating with his family, and he's still mostly there, but you could tell that things are a little bit off. You also realize as the story goes along that despite being released and being said that he's no longer a threat, the FBI is still keeping eyes on him, and they're keeping eyes on everyone around him. And we as the viewer know that, but no one else seems to know that except for Fonz, because Fonz sees guys creeping around the edge of his property. Everyone else thinks, hey, I think he's kind of going crazy, but they're actually there because they're actually FBI agents. And they really want to know what everybody wants to know. And that is, where is the money, Fonz? When Al Capone went to jail, someone hid a bunch of his money. I think $10 million in those dollars. Now, it would have been physical dollars, so it's probably the same, and you actually probably couldn't use it now because the dollar bills look so much different. There might be some in $1,000 bills, which we don't even make anymore. But everyone wanted to know where the money was. His family taking care of him. They had to sell off stuff to keep up appearances because he didn't have any money. And the FBI wanted to know where that money is. Probably a little bit so they could wet their beaks, and also so they could say they found Al Capone's money. We also see that although his entire family is there at Thanksgiving, we're introduced later in that kind of day that he gets a call from a guy out in Ohio, not in Florida where he is, and that is his son. And he had a son, not with his wife, and he doesn't really recognize that kid. It just basically is, you're not a real thing, I don't believe you. And because this is a newer movie, and because I want you to go support Josh Trank if there's a chance you'd see this movie, I'm going to go ahead and say let's cut to the spoilers now. So if you don't want to see the spoilers, jump down to the time down below, because the spoilers are about to start right here. So it's hard to pick a spot to do the spoilers because the funny thing about this is there is stuff happening all through the movie that you don't realize would be a spoiler until the end of the movie, and I don't want to wander into it. So for those of you who stuck around, here you go. Al Capone is basically crazy. He has a fixer that he calls on the phone, that he brings down to Florida, that he goes off on a boat with, Johnny, played by Matt Damon, and it turns out Johnny ain't real. Johnny was likely Al's mentor back when he was coming up in Chicago, and he's just remembering this guy as if he's real, the same way that he's seeing himself as a young boy. And I think the reality is the young boy is not him, it's really his son, but he has never seen his son, so he's imagining him as him when he was a young boy. The way that they show the slow slip for Capone, I think, is really, really great. I mean, there's a moment where he's got, everyone's like, where's the golden gun that was up on the mantle? He's got a golden Tommy gun that he keeps up on the mantle, and everybody's wondering where it is. And next thing you know, you see Al with carrot in the corner of his mouth, pants just full, just not caring, I'm just gonna go right on myself. And he's walking around with the Tommy gun up, and he comes up and sees Rodrigo, his loyal worker, and he's just like, and he just like lights everybody up with this machine gun. And then he just walks around the property with this carrot in the corner of his mouth. And the carrot thing is funny too. Just that they don't want him to smoke anymore because they think it'll be negative for his health. And because he's not really all there, they think they can replace the cigar with a carrot. They just have to watch him because sometimes he chokes on the carrot when he's chomping on it like a cigar. I have said for a very long time that I never want to be a burden on anyone. If it got down to it, I would probably just move myself to Oregon or Washington or Hawaii or one of the states that allows for end-of-life decisions, because I'd rather do that than be what Al Capone looks like in this movie. Just a mess, a burden on everyone, and you don't want to leave the people you love, but at the same time, you are not even there most of the time to know what a burden you're being or how you're inconveniencing people, or that you're, shooting your staff of the last 15 years with a Tommy gun because you think it's a bank robbery or something, or you think everyone's working against you and there are spies in every bushes. And there are some spies because the FBI is watching, but everybody here is on the up and up. I just wouldn't ever want to be in that position to just act and look and be the way that he looks there. But, it wasn't really a thing then, right? Like they released him from jail and you go home. And You fish out of your swimming pool and you chew on carrots, but not too hard, and they have to watch you with a cigar. And the way that his like Junior and his whole family just wants to believe that there's some part of him that's still in there, and like that badass that they love is still there, and he's not. It might be memories in there, but all of that, everything that made up him is gone. I mean, in a lot of ways, he might as well have been a vegetable. He's just a dangerous man. You take away the frontal cortex, the one that says, maybe I shouldn't do that, and he's just operating all prefrontal. It's like, let me shoot people. I want to blow up a gator. I'm going to run around with my pants full of poo and just not care. Like, all of it just is too much. But keeping in mind that I'm watching this and I'm thinking that, and Tom Hardy was an actor who actually performed that. It's amazing. So as we get through the year, it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. It gets revealed that Johnny isn't really there because Al asked his wife, or asked May, I think it's his wife, to go get his guest a drink, and there's just nobody in the chair. And then you start wondering, like, well, who else isn't real? Is the FBI really there? And then there's this like intimation that his son is going to come kill him because he's upset. But in the end, he really just wants to reconnect with his dad. I don't know if they intended this, but there's gold everywhere. Everything is gold. And obviously it's like opulence and wealth and stuff. But whenever he sees himself as a kid, his kid's holding like a yellow balloon, like a gold balloon. And I think that there was something involved with that. That like, forget about the money and all of that stuff doesn't matter. Like, family's what's important. And again, I think he was seeing that kid as his kid because he didn't know what his kid looked like. In the end, he ends up reconnecting with his son, even though we may not all be there. And it's so weird because the bookends of this movie are Thanksgiving dinners. And he is kind of together, and he tells a little story to his granddaughter, and like it's very cute. And then the next Thanksgiving, I'm just sitting there like, don't let Grandpa speak. Grandpa's gonna say something real bad, and we're not gonna be able to get over it. But he doesn't. He just like pulls it enough together to like say something sweet, and then they eat. Also, in my early 20s, I dated an Italian girl, and I got cursed at in Italian a lot. Just so obviously I wouldn't know what she was saying to me, I assume. And I find it funny because I heard things that were familiar to me that Hardy was saying. And I was like, I don't think that's quite right. And then I went and looked it up, and absolutely, like some of the goofs from the movie are that when he's upset and yelling in Italian, it's just nonsense. He's basically saying like gabagool. And for somebody like Tom Hardy who like dives into a character so much, I just feel like it's a little funny that he didn't nail all the Italian. But it fooled me. Or would have completely fooled me if I hadn't already heard those things being yelled at me. And I'm pretty sure it fooled everybody else. So, but the movie closes with a little message on the screen. Capone dies, and it's like nobody ever found the money. I think that there was an intimation that the money was in one of the statues. There was just one statue, and he was like, don't touch my statue, don't move my statue. And they made a big deal of showing that it drove away. So I think they were trying to intimate that, like, oh, he hid his money in a statue. But if they were, it wasn't that clear. At least. So his money was never found, and everyone who was like related to him or close to him basically changed their names after he died. It's like, I'm loyal to you, man. I'm your guy. And then he dies, and they're like, all right, changing my name, moving across the country. You're never gonna hear from me again. And they just basically didn't speak to each other anymore, which is very sad. But also not unexpected. But we reach the end of the movie, so that means it's the end of the spoilers. Let's bring everybody back in, and we'll wrap up this review right now. So I always say, and I feel like I repeat it too much, but the Everyman movie review is about whether or not you'll enjoy the movie, not necessarily about how great the movie is, whether it was done well, whether it's cinematic or an award winner. But in this case, I do believe that it's kind of both. Capone was amazingly well done. Josh Trank, I love him as a filmmaker. I loved his early stuff that led us to Fantastic Four. Whatever happened on that movie, I am not one to judge. But I think he is fully making a comeback here and showing, I am a great director. You need to trust me and give me some films. And they should, because it was extremely well done. And Tom Hardy is, and it takes for a lot for me to say this, Tom is my favorite actor. Of all of the actors who I absolutely adore. In the last few weeks, I've been doing Ed Norton, who just blows my mind. Michael Pena, I've done a couple episodes about him. And surprisingly, Jesse Eisenberg has been a common person I'm doing reviews about. But Tom Hardy's ability to play all of these people and dive into the character and get, I don't know if he's a method actor, but it seems like it, like get real method about it. And then also be Venom and be the Punisher and do all of these things. Like be Bane. He's Bane and he's Al Capone losing his mind, which are probably more similar than I would think, but he is an amazing actor. And Linda Cardellini, I don't know how long she is going to have to go until we give her something that she actually deserves. She was fantastic in this. She's awesome in everything I see her in. just make her a leading lady already. She was in that show on Netflix, Dead by Me or Stand by Dead, something like that. I think I'm mixing that up with Stand by Me in general. But she was in something there. Dead Like Me, maybe? But it was with Christina Applegate. She's so amazing in that. She's amazing. Everything I see her in, she's great in. Like, let's give her something more. Should we? I'm going to write something for you, Linda. You will never hear this, and you will never get that script, and you'll never know. But I'm saying it now for the record. I'm writing something. But not just them. The entire supporting cast. Just, they made you feel like it was really a family. And like Tom Hardy sticks out because I know who Tom Hardy is, and I know who Linda Cardellini is. The other ones are not as well-known actors, and they really felt like it was a family. And it was shot so well. It looks beautiful, and the whole story is fantastic. So I was entertained the entire time. And it doesn't fall into the trap, I think, that a lot of movies like this do. It's 103 minutes long, so hour and 40. It's exactly as long as it needs to be without being any longer. It does the reveals of some of the secret stuff that I talked about in the spoiler section right on time, just when you're like, this is getting insane. What is wrong here? You're like, oh, that's what. Okay. I think it's so well done. Josh Trank deserves a round of applause, as does Tom Hardy and everyone involved with this movie. Not only is it an awards contender, I hope, but it's also just a really enjoyable movie. And listen, if you don't like guns, if you don't like the whole gangster culture, if you don't like that whole mob family part of it, then it ain't going to be for you. But you're also not going to watch a movie called Capone because, of course. And there's a couple really bad scenes, one with violence and blood, and that you have to worry about. There's also a little bit, and I talked about this in the spoiler section, but there's a little bit of human fecal matter that pops up time and again. So if that really bugs you, you probably want to avoid this. But otherwise, it's a sad tale of a guy who is kind of like an American icon, but we're not looking at him when he's an icon. We're looking at him the rest of the story, what happens when icons fall. So unlike I've been able to do in the last few reviews, I highly recommend Capone for everyone. Unless you are specifically eliminated by anything that I've said here, I think you should go out and watch it. It's available on streaming. I'll put that link down below, so go check it out today. It's totally worth it. But before you go and check it out, maybe check out some of the content on this here channel. The Everyman movie review just hit 1 year, so our first birthday, our first anniversary. We have a ton of content here to check out. Make sure you look at all that. And beyond the reviews, there's so much more that you can find on this channel. I encourage you to go look into that. If you're looking for something that's a little more often than, 2 episodes a week, which is crazy that I give you with Everyman movie review, I also have a daily podcast called Rob Explains where I talk about cool, interesting, and random things. And it's available every day on Anchor.fm or wherever you get podcasts. And every week we're doing a summary video where you can watch all of the episodes from the entire week, all put together in one long video that's going to be available on YouTube. Next time we're going to be continuing with our theme, so I hope you'll join me for then. But until that time, take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great week, everybody.